This is my first hyper-realistic digital artwork. It took me over 25 hours and is the craziest artwork I've ever made. In this video, I'll be taking you through exactly how I made it, with my process and thoughts from doing this, where I struggled, what I learned, how it affected my art and more. I knew I wanted to make this realistic from the start, didn't have a process or any plan to do it. I set up a grid I would use to copy from my reference, but that was about all I know. I used the grid to sketch around the outside of the face, but later I realised that this was a mistake, that I could just put the colours directly in and they would be accurate due to the accuracy of the grid. After that I started colouring by doing the corner of the blazer. I started with something not too important to just get a feel for the colours, as I knew I'd get better as I continued. Here I'm mostly just adding in a flat colour for each square, then trying to texture it to make it look detailed. It kinda worked, but I changed from this approach a little later to something that works better. Now I went up the side. I did this entire artwork with just the hard round brush. It probably would have made it slightly easier if I'd at least used some texture brushes, or even the smudge tool to make the stuff like I'm painting now look better, but I wanted to optimise my workflow for maximum efficiency, and the time it would take me to constantly switch the brush I'm using didn't seem worth it, especially as I'd have to do it hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. As I go through the top and do some of his hair, I'm also trying to find the optimal brush size. Something too small means that it takes too long to fill each square, or something too large loses detail in the piece. I also didn't want to be constantly changing my brush size due to the same efficiency problems as before. Eventually I found a good balance where I'd go slightly smaller for the streaks of higher detail areas like the hair and skin, but then increase the brush size and really speed up the pace. I was working for the background where I could afford to lose some detail. As expected, some areas were harder than others. For the transitions of the hair to the skin, I had to try and make the texture work cleanly for the eyes, probably one of the most important parts. I blocked out the shape first to make sure there was no mistakes. The slight eye bags I thought looked really bad as I was drawing them, and were ruining the piece, but I just trusted the process and they turned out fine. On the other hand, one mistake that I didn't notice was on the nose. While drawing it in layers, I later saw that the lower layer for the nose looked slightly shifted to the left compared to the upper layer, with the positions of the highlights where I hadn't made sure to keep it consistent. I tried to fix it up later and did the job well enough, but I still felt it wasn't as good as it could have been if I had got it right the first time. The lips I was slightly worried about just because of the transition of them to the skin. This is not what turned out to be the hard part of the lips. I had trouble getting the corners to look reasonable, but it was really the bottom lip on the right side from your perspective that messed me up. That entire chunk all the way down to the chin just looks disconnected from the rest of the drawing. The rest of the chin turned out well, and now I looked back at the eyes after not seeing them for a while and I was really happy with them. I had a little unease about putting the bounce light from the shirt onto the bottom of his chin, as it was already looking really good. And after refining it a bit more later to make it not too strong, I think it was a good addition. Finishing it off with the last bit of his shirt and background, then spending a few minutes to fix up anything that needed it, and close some gaps left by using the grid, where I didn't paint on. So what happened to me after? I think surprisingly, this actually helped me improve in quite a lot. It's not like anything the traditional drawing practice you would do, but it got me really choosing accurate colours and looking in a lot more detail at all the slight variations in something when I'm drawing it.